Welcome to the Every Brain is Different podcast. It is Samantha and Lauren with you. We are here with Daniella Feldhausen, and after 25 years as an attorney in DC, Daniela realized that her real passion was teaching kids to read. As the founder of Kids Up Reading Tutors, she's built a team of 15 specialists who help students all across the country overcome reading and spelling challenges, including dyslexia and dysgraphia. So welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more how you're involved in the neurodivergent community?
Sure. So we work with kids who are having a hard time with reading and spelling. Some of them have been diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia. Some of them have not. Of those who have not, some of them might get a diagnosis if they went to get a full neuropsych or psychoeducational evaluation. But from our point of view, it doesn't really matter. From our point of view, the issue is this child's having a hard time with reading and spelling. Let's figure out why, and let's go solve those particular problems. And for that, it doesn't matter what kind of or whether you have any kind of diagnosis. Obviously, we start by talking to the parent and finding out the background of what's going on and where are the challenges and what the student does well. And then we go ahead and do an initial evaluation of the student that is focused in much more detail than those neuropsych or psychoeducational evaluations on the actual skills. Because we're trying to figure out what does the student already know and what do they need to learn. And then we're going to teach them those skills they need to learn. So if you're, having trouble in a lot of areas, maybe we'll go through the whole program A to Z. But a lot of the kids that we work with, they're doing very well in this area and in this area and this area. They've got this down, they've got that down. But then they have some other areas over here that they need to work on. And so then what we can do is we will tailor what we do exactly to what that child needs. And we will teach them exactly the skills that they need. And as a result of that, they tend to go through our program pretty quickly and get caught up pretty quickly because we're doing it one-on-one. We're focusing on exactly what they need. And then we do what's called high-dosage tutoring, or some people call it high-intensity tutoring, meaning we're not doing this once a week. We're doing it 2, 3, 4, in the summer, sometimes 5 times a week. Actually, often 5 times a week in the summer. Generally with the goal of getting the students caught up as quickly as possible.
Awesome.
It's my new calling. I absolutely love it. I guess I've been doing it for about 8 years now. Very different from my old line of work. I went back, I got a master's degree in special ed, and knew from the time I went into that program to get that master's degree, I knew I wanted to work with kids who are having trouble with reading and spelling. And so that's what we do. So we got a team of, I guess it must have been 15 when I wrote that blurb that you just read. But I think we're up to about 20 tutors right now, working with kids all across the country and a handful of them outside.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
If you ever have a chance, you can go to our website and read a bunch of reviews or just go to our Google business profile. Those are all authentic reviews, 100%, I swear. And families are just so happy because they've been stressed about this. The child's been stressed, the parents have been stressed about just how much of a hard time the child's having with reading and spelling, reading and writing. And as the kids learn these skills, they start to realize that even before they've learned everything that they need to learn, so even before they've got it all down, they can already see, okay, these are the things I need to learn. I've got somebody now who's teaching me these things. I'm going to get there. And just that knowledge right there is really confidence building. So we've got a lot of kids who come to us very, very stressed out about school, very stressed out about reading and spelling, which then bleeds over into math when you have to read word problems and social studies and science and everything else. And homework time tends to be difficult. And as they're starting to gain this confidence, as they're gaining these skills, just the temperature in the whole household comes down because everybody's feeling more confident. The work is suddenly easier. Suddenly the kids are able to do their homework. They're able to read the prompt and then write their response to it. And so we just get the most awesome emails from families who are just so, so, so happy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you tell us the difference between dyslexia and dysgraphia?
Sure.
Then we work on both. Yeah.
Yeah. So dyslexia is about reading and dysgraphia is about writing. They are, to some extent, two sides of the same coin. So if you're having trouble, so we'll talk about dyslexia for a minute. That's the one that has to do with having trouble with reading. If you're having trouble with reading, chances are you're having trouble with what we call phonological skills. And I can explain that in a minute if you want. And or you're having trouble with phonics. Or maybe you haven't learned morphology or the spelling rules that you need to know. Those are a lot of the same skills that you need in order to become a good speller. So there's a huge overlap between dyslexia, which is about reading, and dysgraphia, which is about writing. The big difference is that there are multiple different flavors of dysgraphia. So if you think of dysgraphia as the child's having a hard time writing, well, it might be that they're having a hard time writing because they've got an awkward pencil grip, and as they're writing, like literally their hand hurts, and therefore they don't want to write. So if that's the issue, you might want to go to talk to an occupational therapist with your student who can help your student learn how to hold their gripping pencil properly. You might have the spelling issue that I was just talking about. If you've got the spelling issue, a lot of kids we work with will write really short sentences with really short words because, oh no, otherwise they're going to have to write all these big long words, and that's just scary. So
Yeah.
a lot of the kids we work with don't write a lot or tell you they're hate writing and things like that because spelling is so difficult. So if it's a spelling problem that's causing the writing problem, we can address that. Then there are other kids who have no problem with their hand motor skills. They have no problem with spelling. They might have a problem sort of organizing their thoughts or something like that. So that is a different kind of dysgraphia. So there are multiple different kinds of dysgraphia. So when a parent comes to me and says, oh, my child was just diagnosed with dysgraphia, can you help? My first question is always, well, tell me more. Tell me more. What kind of dysgraphia, like what's going on with your student? And then depending on what the answer to that is, either we can help them or maybe we refer them out to somebody else who can help them with their particular issue. So
Yeah.
if you're talking about the spelling, it's two sides of the same coin, dyslexia and dysgraphia, because the underlying skills are basically the same.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And then there's also, I think it's dyscalculia, where you have issues with math and numbers.
Yeah.
So your child could have like all three, or they could have just one or two, or yeah. So anyway, okay, it's cool. Thank
Although
you.
if you have dyslexia, you are highly likely to have dysgraphia because think about it. If you can read a word, what's the likelihood you're going to be able to spell it properly?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we definitely work with a lot of kids actually who have dysgraphia, so they have trouble with spelling, but they don't have trouble with reading. Or they don't have trouble with reading words that they're already familiar with and that they've been working on for a while, maybe because they got really good memories.
Yeah.
So sometimes the family will come to us and say, my daughter or my son did well, but her spelling is just atrocious. And then when you sort of do the evaluation of them and figure out what's going on, it turns out that the reading looks like it's great, but actually they're also having a hard time reading words they've never seen before. So if you bump into a word you've never seen before, you need to sound it out more or less from left to right. But if your kid's got a really good memory and you've just seen this word once or twice before and you've already committed it to memory, you might look like you can read really well and maybe you can read really well until you get to those words that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to go to a friend or a parent and say, what's that word? So there is, even for those kids who've got super good memories that are so good that they don't look like they have a problem with reading, even those kids will generally have a problem with reading unfamiliar words.
Yes.
It becomes more and more important as the kids get older. So when you're in elementary school, your vocabulary, the words that you need to be able to read, it's a more or less finite number. But then as you get to middle school and then high school and then college, you need to be able to read words you've never seen before. And that's when those kids then tend to need a little bit more help. So they'll need the help on the spelling side and decoding or sounding out words.
That makes sense. What is the first step that you recommend to parents if they see that their kid is having a hard time reading or writing or just having any of that? Like, do you automatically go get a diagnosis or do you maybe get help with you while you're waiting for an evaluation? Because I know that waiting for an evaluation sometimes can take years. And so what would you recommend to parents?
It depends on why, it depends on so many things, but is it only a reading spelling problem or are there other problems as well? If it's only a reading spelling problem, sometimes what I'll talk to parents about is, well, maybe you want to make an appointment to get the neuropsych or the psychoeducational evaluation done. You're probably not going to get an appointment anytime soon anyway. But go ahead and make that appointment, and then let's start the tutoring. And within a month or 2 or 3, you'll see whether you want to keep that appointment for the full-blown evaluation. And a lot of times the tutoring solves the problem, and then the parents will decide, you know what, they don't actually need that full-blown evaluation anymore. But again, it depends a lot on what all is going on with the student. If it's not just a reading spelling issue, like there's something going on in multiple areas and you don't know what it is, absolutely get an evaluation because it can be super, super helpful and help you figure out what's going on and figure out how to help your student. But if everything's going swimmingly, except for reading and spelling, then maybe you can make your appointment and go ahead and start with the tutoring and see if the tutoring solves the problem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's
Yeah.
what I would say.
I often say that people should get an evaluation and a diagnosis because it opens up doors for services. But if you can get the service without getting the diagnosis,
That's right.
then why put your kid through the diagnosis process unless there's other things going on?
Right.
So, yeah, that totally makes sense. And then do you work with kids, older kids like middle school and high school? Or because I know like a lot of parents think like, oh, my kid's in middle school or high school, it's too late for them.
It is not too late. It is not too late. It is never too late. We work with kids in grades 1 through 12, and we have occasionally worked with college students. We don't have, I think we got 2 college students right now. So
Okay.
have some college students, but for the most part, it's grades 1 through 12. And I would say most of the kids we work with are in elementary school, but there's always a good cohort in high school. I think what happens is that parents are sort of looking forward and looking at the SATs and the ACTs and all that coming down the road. And they're like, okay, we need to do something. We need to go get our child tested. And then they get the testing, and lo and behold, they discover dyslexia and dysgraphia, which they may not have realized before because of what you were describing before, that maybe the child has a really good memory. Maybe they've got a lot of background knowledge, good vocabulary, and so they were able to kind of make their way through the system. But then they get a diagnosis in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, occasionally in 12th grade. And so we'll always have a cohort of high schoolers that we're working with. And then more recently, within the past couple of years, we've also had a cohort of middle schoolers because the kids who are now in middle school, they had COVID kindergarten, COVID first grade, COVID second grade, and didn't necessarily get the reading skills, the reading instruction that they needed in that time.
Yeah.
It was a hard time for all of us. Yeah. Imagine you're a second grade teacher coming back after COVID, and you've got a classroom full of kids who missed kindergarten and first grade instruction in reading. What do you do as a second grade teacher? Do you go back, teach those kindergarten skills? Do you teach the first grade skills? Do you just decide to move forward and teach the second grade skills? I think different teachers in different districts handle it in different ways, but there's no way you can combine 3 years worth of reading instruction into, that first year when kids got back to school in person. And so a lot of kids missed out on a lot of instruction. That's really showing itself in the population of kids that we work with.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. And my kid was one of those that kindergarten was in and out. So when COVID hit, he was in preschool. And so obviously kindergarten was affected. And I can definitely tell a difference between what he learned and how he learned versus his siblings. And a huge difference. And I'm not blaming anyone for that. Like it was a really hard time for everyone, but I can definitely see how it was changed and people didn't know what to do. And so it was really hard for the teachers once they got back to school, for sure. What would you tell parents who I know parents who their kids are in middle school, high school, they feel like they've tried everything. Their kid is tired, they're tired, and they just don't want to try anything else. They say, my kid has a fourth grade reading level. I'm good with that. We're just gonna take a break. We're not gonna try anymore. So what would you say to parents to maybe encourage them through that time?
So I don't talk to a lot of parents like that. I talk to a lot of students like that. So a lot of students are like, why? I'm doing fine. I'm hanging in there. And I try to have a conversation with them about, well, would your life be any better if reading and spelling were easier? Like, do you think you would get your classwork done more quickly? Like, never mind the grades, right? Or talk about the grades if it's something that the student's interested in. Like, would you like to have better grades in all these different classes? Would you like classwork to be easier to finish during the school day so that you don't have to take it home in the evening? Would you like your homework time to be less? Because if you can read and spell fluently, it's not going to take you nearly as long to complete all of your homework. And so things like that, questions like that, a lot of times kids will say, well, yeah, actually, it would be nice if homework were easier to do. And right now I'm spending an hour or 2 hours or whatever the number is on homework. And yeah, it would be really nice if it only took me half as long. And so that's how we can get a lot of kids on board. And like I said, it's the parents who have to reach out. So if the parents aren't interested, then they're probably not going to reach out. The good news is it's not ever too late. So if you decide that it's fifth grade and this is just not something that your family can add into the mix right now, okay, how about in a year or maybe in 2 years? I mean, I think at some point, well, it'd be awesome if everybody were a good reader and speller. And if you just can't fit it in right now, well, then maybe later. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
Don't give up. Just maybe postpone, but don't give up.
Yeah. I know I watched some kids go through school and they just struggled and struggled and struggled and they just get so tired. They're just like, I just want to get through school, graduate, and then live my life. Like I'm so done. And so I can understand that. But then I see kids who get help and then they go on to college because they can read and write and it's so much easier for them. And so, yeah. Last question before we wrap up. But what would you say to parents whose kid is on an IEP and so they think that their kid is going to get all the services that they need from the IEP and they don't need outside help and they're just going to get everything that they need from the IEP. And I know I'm not blaming schools when I say this, but if your kid is having an issue, you often need to go outside of the school because the school does not have the resources to give your kid everything that they need.
Yeah. What you as the parent might want to do is have a conversation with the special ed team and ask them, so you just diagnosed my child with, let's say, dyslexia, which is the same thing, by the way, as a specific learning disability in reading and writing. Some schools call it that rather than using the terminology dyslexia. So you just diagnosed my child and you've just given my child an IEP. So now, if you think about all the students who've been on an IEP for dyslexia or the specific learning disability, how many of those kids have you graduated out, the school? How many of those kids have you graduated out of special ed because you taught them to read and spell? And the answer to that is going to be a very low number. And I think that's when parents, would realize that, oh, okay, the school isn't even expecting that they're going to teach my child to read and spell to a level where they could then graduate them out of special ed. The teachers, and I'm going to echo something you said before, the teachers are doing the best they can. There are limited resources. There are limited hours in the day. One special ed teacher has a caseload of, I don't know how many students. They're trying to teach students these missing skills in groups. And imagine if you were trying to teach something to a group of kids, whether it's 2 or 3 or 5 or 7 or whatever the number is. What are you going to do? how are you going to decide which skills you're going to teach? What works best for each student is if you start with the earliest skills that they're missing and build up from there. But if you've got 3 different students or 5 or 10 different students and everybody got different holes to plug, how are you going to decide what are you going to work on? And then what happens, let's say you decide you're going to work on the digraph SH. And so now you've got 7 kids learning the digraph SH, some of whom already knew it, some of whom didn't. And then even the ones that you're now who are now learning it, some of them need more repetition than others. And so at some point the teacher's going to just say, okay, well, now we're done with SH, now we're going to move on. And if you project that out and over all of these different skills that kids need to learn, you just can't make really good progress in that kind of situation. Or let me put it another way, you're going to make progress, but you're not going to get caught up and be able to graduate out of special ed, a fluent reader and a good speller. So
Yeah.
if you really want your child to get caught up, then you're going to have to do it outside of school, in addition to whatever's happening inside school.
Yeah.
But you're going to need extra help on the outside. I think that's just what reality looks like, just because of the constraints that schools are under.
Absolutely.
If it were the world according to me, reading would be the #1 priority, and everything else would be secondary. And these kids need to read, but that's not the reality for schools. They have all kinds of other mandates that they have to abide by.
Yep.
To make reading the one and only priority.
Yeah. And once again, not blaming schools, just that's the reality of the situation. So, yeah.
It is. There are only so many dollars, there are only so many teachers, there are only so many pullouts and things that you can do in order to help these kids.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day about this, and I need to end the episode though. So what resources do you have for parents that you recommend? Do you have any other resources that you recommend or that they can find? Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. We've got a ton of resources on our website. So the name of the company is Kids Up Reading Tutors. So you can find us at kidsupreadingtutors.com. There's a resource, I think it's at the bottom of the homepage, Red Flags for Dyslexia. So a checklist that you can kind of go through and think about, are these red flags? Do I need to be worried about dyslexia? If you go to, there's another page, Blogs and More. There are a bunch of blogs on all kinds of topics there, webinars, podcasts, et cetera. So there's a ton of information actually on our website.
Awesome.
All kinds of other resources. So it's a great place to go.
Cool. I am excited for people to know about this because I have struggled, I haven't struggled with reading, but I have family members and I have kids that struggle with reading, and I've seen them get help for it, and it's life-changing when they can actually read and feel confident in reading, and it increases their self-esteem and just helps everything. So I love what you're doing. I love that you're helping families and kids with this. And then our last question is, what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? I go hiking. I play pickleball. I try to get outside and do some active stuff because I spend so much of my life sitting at a desk in front of a computer.
Yeah.
So, and I'm trying to balance that out with doing some outdoor fun kind of physical activities.
Love it. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We loved having you.
It was wonderful to be here. If you have any questions, I'm happy to do a follow-up anytime. And if anybody wants to talk to me, just go to our website. There's a button there that says book a call, and that will take you straight to my calendar, and you can set up a time for us to talk.
Awesome. And we will have your links in the show notes so people can just go directly from there. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, Lauren, what were the highlights?
A lot. I would like to have her back. I would like to ask more questions, maybe some more actual, maybe parents can't afford a tutor. What are some things they can do at home? I'm sure she has a lot of that on her resources, so definitely go check out her website. Reading is so important. The national average for adults is 5th grade, 6th grade, which I think is problematic. So if we can get kids reading younger and better, I think the world will be a better place. So
Yeah.
I think it's important, and it's surprising that it's not a priority in school, because I feel like reading is the foundation for most things. So
Yeah.
I love what she's doing. I think that's awesome. So props to her and her team, and helping middle-aged middle school kids, so kindergarten up, whatever.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love that she's not necessarily, she mentioned like, yeah, they have a diagnosis, but we're really one-on-one. What is this kid's specific struggle area, and going from there. So I think she's
Yeah.
awesome. Love to have her back on.
Yeah, for sure. So if people listening, if you would like to have her back on, let us know. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions specifically for her that we could ask her next time. I think that would be awesome to have questions from the audience. And yeah, go check her out. And we will talk to you next week.